It didn't leak slowly. It didn't trickle out. It exploded. And when it did, it exposed something Meghan Markle and Prince Harry never wanted the public to see: panic, collapse, and a complete loss of control behind the Montecito gates. Between Christmas and New Year, when most people were distracted by family dinners and holiday leftovers, a thunderclap hit the Sussex operation. James Holt, their most trusted ally, their longest-serving lieutenant, the man who followed them out of royal life and across an ocean, was gone. Just like that. And when someone like James Holt walks away, you don't call it a resignation, you call it a warning. This wasn't some junior assistant burning out. This was the man who moved his entire family from the UK to Los Angeles to build the Sussex dream. The man featured prominently in their Netflix documentary. The man who stood by them through every scandal, every backlash, every implosion. For him to leave now, after years of loyalty, sends a message so loud it echoes through every empty office Archewell now owns. And the truth is, James didn't walk alone. He was just the biggest domino. Days before his exit became public, Meredith Maines, head of public relations, quietly slipped out the door after barely 7 months. 7 months of trying to rescue a brand that seemed determined to sabotage itself. And then came the final blow. 3 more Archewell employees dismissed under the polite corporate excuse of a new operating model. Strip away the jargon, and what you're left with is brutal reality. This wasn't restructuring. This was a purge, an organization being hollowed out in real time. Insiders aren't sugarcoating it. One called it a catastrophe of their own making. Another said it plainly: when your entire staff leaves at once, something is very wrong. This wasn't strategy. This was freefall. And the timing? Dumping the news during the dead zone between Christmas and New Year wasn't accidental. It was classic damage control. Bury the bad news when fewer people are paying attention. But instead of disappearing, the story detonated. Because when people stop whispering and start running, everyone notices. Archewell, the foundation meant to symbolize Harry and Meghan's bold, independent future, is reportedly down to 1 or 2 employees. 1 or 2. Let that sink in. The empire they promised the world has been reduced to a skeleton crew, barely keeping the lights on. And behind the carefully worded statements and forced smiles, insiders are revealing why this collapse was inevitable. James Holt's farewell statement read like praise polished to a mirror shine. Every sentence glowing, every word safe. But people who know how this game works read between the lines. And what they see is fear, exhaustion, and a desperate attempt to exit without burning bridges. Former insiders said the Harry described in that statement doesn't match the man they worked with behind closed doors. Some go further, questioning whether inspiration ever existed at all. These aren't random critics. These are people who were inside the machine. James says he's leaving to return to London with his family. Sounds reasonable until you ask why now. Why after uprooting his life? Why after 5 years of chaos? Sources say the real reason has nothing to do with homesickness. They describe a workplace defined by constant pressure, impossible demands, and ever-shifting expectations. A pressure cooker where the heat keeps rising and no one is allowed to complain. When your most loyal soldier retreats, it means the battlefield has become unbearable. And James wasn't even the most explosive departure. That title belongs to Meredith Maines, a seasoned PR professional, calm, capable, known for keeping her head down and doing the work. She lasted 7 months. 7 months of crisis after crisis, each one worse than the last. And insiders said the breaking point came during what's now quietly referred to as Photogate. When Meghan and Harry attended a Kardashian Christmas party, photos appeared online, innocent, casual, and allegedly all hell broke loose. Demands were made for the images to be taken down. Bridges burned with one of the most powerful families in entertainment. For a PR professional trying to rebuild credibility, it was madness. And that was just one incident. There was Harry's disastrous interview after losing his security case, the tantrum, the accusations, the viral backlash, then the baby twerking video, the endless controversies. And through it all, sources say professional advice was ignored completely. When Meredith left, the contrast between statements said everything. The Sussex response was cold, clinical, almost dismissive. Her response? Warm, grateful, forward-looking. And anyone in PR knows what that means. She walked. They didn't push. Here's the number no one can spin. 11 communications professionals gone in 5 years. 11. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. At some point, you stop blaming the staff and start looking at the bosses. Insiders describe Meghan as a micromanager who hires experts and then refuses to let them do their jobs. Goalposts constantly moving. Nothing ever good enough. When something fails, blame rolls downhill, never inward. And now comes the most revealing move of all. Archewell is shifting shifting to a fiscal sponsor model. Translation: Harry and Meghan are stepping away from actually running their own charity. The unglamorous work, administration, fundraising, logistics handed off to someone else. What remains? The photo ops, the awards, the speeches, the credit. Insiders are blunt. This is what organizations do when they're winding down or when founders want distance. Humanitarian branding without humanitarian labor. The irony is staggering. Just weeks before gutting their organization, Harry and Meghan accepted yet another humanitarian award. Smiling, applauded, while behind the scenes, staff were being laid off. Programs left in limbo. The parents' network now hangs in uncertainty. Who's running it? Who's answering the phones? Who's doing the actual work? No one seems to know. Follow the money and the picture gets darker. Montecito isn't cheap. The mansion, the security, the lifestyle, the burn rate is enormous, and the income simply isn't there. Netflix hasn't delivered what they hoped. Spotify walked away. The lifestyle brand stumbled. Speaking engagements dried up. Cost-cutting disguised as restructuring tells the real story. When you can't afford staff, you find elegant ways to let them go. Hollywood has noticed. Success attracts success. Failure repels it. The Sussex brand is now radioactive. Doors that once flew open are quietly closing. Agencies are warning clients. Why tie yourself to chaos? Why risk your own reputation? Meghan had every advantage imaginable. Global fame, royal access, unlimited attention, and somehow it's all slipping away. And beneath the professional collapse, there's something even more unsettling. The marriage, joint ventures dismantled, separate PR operations, separate paths. Harry increasingly abroad. Meghan rooted in California. These are the warning signs. This is what happens before the papers are filed. Whether separation comes tomorrow or years from now, the structure around them is already being dismantled. Across the Atlantic, the royal family watches in silence. No statements, no interventions, because they don't need to say a word. Every failed venture says it for them. The institution was never the problem. Silence is strategy, and it's working. What remains now is the aftermath. Archewell as a shell, Hollywood dreams fading, finances tightening, relevance slipping. The fairy tale didn't end with fireworks. It ended with staff packing boxes, doors closing quietly, and an empire collapsing under its own weight. And this time, there's no one left to blame but the people at the top. And here's the part nobody around Meghan and Harry wants to say out loud, but everyone is thinking it. This didn't happen overnight. This collapse didn't come out of nowhere. This was years in the making, quietly building behind curated Instagram posts, carefully staged appearances, and award ceremonies that looked impressive on the surface but hid rot underneath. Because when staff keep leaving, the problem isn't burnout. It isn't media pressure. It isn't even bad luck. It's leadership. Or more accurately, the absence of it. People who worked inside the Sussex operation describe a strange contradiction. On camera, everything is about compassion, kindness, empathy, and listening. Behind closed doors, it's control, paranoia, and constant second-guessing. Meetings that go in circles. Decisions made, unmade, then blamed on someone else. Projects launched before they're ready, then abandoned the moment criticism appears. And through it all, a deep obsession with image over substance. Former staffers say nothing terrified Meghan more than losing narrative control. Not failure, criticism. A bad headline could trigger days of panic, frantic calls, sudden changes in direction. And Harry, instead of grounding the operation, reportedly amplified the chaos. Emotional reactions, grievances resurfacing again and again. A fixation on perceived enemies rather than actual goals. When leadership is driven by resentment instead of clarity, everyone underneath pays the price. This is why Archewell never stabilized. This is why initiatives never matured. This is why big announcements were followed by silence. The structure simply couldn't hold under the weight of ego, insecurity, and constant reinvention. You cannot build a sustainable organization when every decision is about optics and every setback is treated as a personal attack. And the staff knew it. That's why they left quietly. No tell-all interviews, no explosive exit statements, just polite words and distance. Because people who survive environments like that don't want revenge, they want peace. They want to forget the anxiety, the late-night messages, the impossible expectations. They want their lives back. What's especially damaging is how this staff exodus reshapes the public narrative Harry and Meghan have relied on for years. Their story was always built on victimhood. The palace failed them. The press hunted them. The system broke them. But now there is no palace, no royal machine, no institutional villain. This is their operation, their rules, their freedom, and it's still falling apart. That contradiction is fatal to their brand. You can't claim oppression while exercising total control. You can't blame the system when you are the system. And audiences are finally starting to see that. Sympathy has limits. Patience runs out. And once people stop believing you're misunderstood and start believing you're incompetent, the fall accelerates fast. Hollywood is brutal in that way. It doesn't argue. It doesn't lecture. It just withdraws. Invitations stop coming. Calls go unanswered. Opportunities quietly evaporate. Not out of malice, out of calculation. And right now, the calculation is simple. Meghan and Harry bring drama, not results. Noise, not value. Harry, in particular, looks increasingly unmoored. The prince who once had an identity handed to him now appears to be searching for one in real time. One conference here. One humanitarian appearance there. One vague speech about purpose and healing. It all feels scattered, reactive, and slightly desperate. The confidence is gone. What's left is a man trying to prove he still matters without knowing exactly how. Meghan, meanwhile, appears trapped in a loop of reinvention that no longer convinces anyone. Actress, royal rebel, humanitarian, podcaster, lifestyle guru, influencer, chef. Each identity launched with confidence, each quietly abandoned when the applause fades. Reinvention only works when there's growth underneath it. Otherwise, it starts to look like running away. And this is where the marriage speculation refuses to die. Not because of gossip, but because of patterns. Separate teams, separate priorities, separate trajectories. The professional unraveling mirrors the personal distance people have been whispering about for months. Whether they stay married or not almost feels secondary now. The brand marriage, the united Sussex front, is already fractured. The most brutal part? The royal family doesn't have to lift a finger. No retaliation, no leaks, no counter-narrative. Time is doing the work for them. Every staff departure reinforces the idea that the palace wasn't cruel. It was structured. It wasn't oppressive. It was disciplined. And the contrast is devastating. This is what freedom looks like without accountability. This is what happens when grievance replaces gratitude and image replaces effort. The Sussex story was supposed to be about reinvention, independence, and impact. Instead, it's becoming a case study in how fast privilege can evaporate when it isn't backed by competence. What happens next won't be dramatic all at once. It will be quiet, a downsized foundation, fewer appearances, smaller deals, lower stakes, and eventually silence. Not the powerful silence of dignity, the silence of irrelevance. Because in the end, the most damaging thing that can happen to people who thrive on attention isn't criticism. It's indifference. And that indifference is already creeping in. The empire didn't collapse because of enemies. It collapsed because it couldn't stand on its own. And once people see that, there's no going back. There's no going back. There's no going back. There's no...